Hi everyone, this is Christy, and in this video, I'm going to give you a quick start look at WordPress. So this is for beginners who maybe don't know their way around, just want to sort of get your feet under you as you're trying to learn how to use WordPress. The first thing I want to show you is how to get into the dashboard or the back end of your website. If you haven't already done that, you may not know this, but the back end is going to be usually by default, it's going to be at the URL of your website /wp-admin. It is possible that you've installed a plugin or something to change that URL. So if you didn't set up WordPress yourself, check with the person that set it up for you if you can't find your dashboard at WP-admin. Then you're going to log in using the username and password that were set up when you set up your WordPress site. If you don't know your password, you can click on lost password. But I'm going to log in with mine. Let's log in here. I don't want to save it, so let me just close these windows here. All right, so I'm logged into my WordPress dashboard. The stuff that you see in this dashboard area is going to change depending on what plugins you have installed. It may also change depending on the theme that you have installed. So yours may look a little bit different than mine. But if we look over here on the left side of the screen, you see that I've got a bunch of menus. I've got the dashboard, which is what we're looking at now, posts, media, pages, comments, appearance, plugins, users, tools, and settings. Yours might look different. You might have more menus than that. That's usually because you've installed a plugin or you've installed a theme that adds to those menus. So your menu may look different than mine. That's okay. I'm only going to show you the stuff that's installed automatically by default with WordPress. All right, so the first thing I usually do when I go into a new WordPress site is go into my settings and I tweak a few settings. I will tell you, I already made these changes to this particular site. So if I go to the settings and then go to general, we'll see here, I've made some changes. So yours might look different. You can always change the site title if you need to. I do recommend changing the tagline to something that makes sense for your website and not have it just say just another WordPress site. That tagline, depending on how your site is set up, it might show up in your page titles, it might show up in your theme somewhere. So I do recommend changing that so that it's relevant to your site. Now, another thing that I usually do is change the time zone. By default, it's set to UTC+0. That's not my time zone. I like to set this to the time zone of the website. So wherever the website lives, not really where it lives, not the hosting provider for it, but where the address of the website would be. So if I'm based in Maryland, so my time zone is Eastern, US Eastern time zone. Maryland, US Eastern time zone is not an option in this list, but New York is. So you might need to look for the largest city near you. Funny enough, I'm near Washington, D.C., and that doesn't show up in this list, but New York does. So I chose New York. You can change the date format and the time format, up to you. By default, the week starts on is set to Monday. I like to change that to Sunday because my calendars start on Sunday. It makes it easier for me when I'm looking at my website and there's a calendar in it that calendar matches what's in my brain. So I usually set that to Sunday. If you make any changes in here, you're going to click on Save Changes to save those to the database. Next thing I want to look at is reading. So we go to reading, and by default, when you set up a WordPress site, the homepage displays your latest posts, and that's fine for my particular site. Depending on which theme you have installed, you might need to change this to displaying a static page for your homepage and your post page. So you would just need to choose which pages show that content. In a lot of cases, the homepage is set to a static page. The post page may or may not be, but this is going to depend on your theme. So by default, I'm going to leave that at your latest posts for now. The blog pages by default are going to show 10 posts. If you wanted to show more, you can change this. If you wanted to show less, you can change this. If you have more than 10 posts on your blog, when you go to a blog archive, it's going to add paging. For most themes, it's going to add paging at the bottom so that you can go to the previous 10 pages or the next 10 pages. This is the number of items that show in your RSS feed, your syndication feed. So if you want to show more or less, you would just change the setting here. For each post in the feed, by default, it's going to show the full text. It's going to show the entire content of the post. If you wanted to instead, you could have it show the excerpt. I usually leave this at full post. One more setting that's really important on this page is the search engine visibility. You want this to be unchecked if you want search engines to index your site. If you're still building your site and you're not ready for search engines to index it, then this should be checked. But once your site is done, ready to go, it's launched, then uncheck that and make sure you save the changes again. All right. One more thing I want to look at in the settings is the permalinks. So we're going to go to permalinks. Mine is set to post name. That's probably the best for search engine optimization. Now, if you've already got your site up and running and you've had it set to day and name or month and name or even numeric or something like that, I don't recommend changing this unless you have someone to guide you through it, because any links to the existing URLs are going to break. So you'll need some way to set up redirects. There are plugins that can do that for you, so you may want to look into that. But if you haven't already set up your site, you're just building it out right now, or you don't really have any links to your website, then you can change that to post name. I don't ever recommend using plain because that's really not human readable. It puts ID numbers in your post, your URLs. It's not really that helpful. And I don't usually recommend doing it as numeric. So post name is usually the way to go. If you have certain plugins installed, like WooCommerce, for example, you might see more things on this page. Now, just be aware when you change things on this page, when you save the changes, it updates your permalink structure, which means it's actually writing to a file on your server. If your WordPress installation doesn't have access to write to that file, then your permalink settings won't be updated. If you ever have that issue, check with your hosting provider. They should be able to change the permissions on the server to fix that for you. So just something to be aware of. All right, so that's all the settings. Next thing we're going to look at is our posts. So I'm going to click on the post menu right here. And you can see right now, I have one post right now that's set to draft. That means that the post exists in my back end. It does not show up yet on my front end. It won't show up in my blog. Posts are your blog posts or your news items, or they're timely posts. You might update them. You don't always update them, but you might update them if there's updates to it. But this is your blog. This is going to be where you put your post for your blog. If you want to edit an existing post, you just need to find it in the list here. You can search for it over here. And then when you find it, you're going to click on the title, or you're going to click on edit to make changes to that post. So you can see here, this is my Hello World post. I was playing around with this earlier. I went to upload an image, but I didn't finish doing that yet. So this is using the block editor. If you go into a post and it says something like edit with Elementor or edit with Divi, that means that you're using a visual page builder for your post. I personally am not a huge fan of visual page builders. Some people love them. I do use them from time to time. It depends on the theme that I've got installed and the client that I'm working with and a bunch of other factors. But I do recommend, if you're able to, use the block editor, which is what I'm using right here. Typically, the content created in a block editor is going to load faster. It's going to be more streamlined, more optimized for the internet. So I recommend using blocks instead of visual editors when you can. Visual editors can be optimized, but I find that most beginners don't know how to do that. And a lot of beginners will add all kinds of really cool whistles and bells, and they make their pages very unoptimized. So I don't recommend doing that. All right. So the cool thing about the block editor, let me actually delete this block. 1 second. Ignore this. Pretend I'm not doing that. There we go. So if you wanted to add a block, you can just click in the previous block, anywhere in the previous block. And you can see here, if I click on the previous block, I get this little plus. And this is to add a new block. So if I click on that, that's going to give me a little menu that pops up, and it shows me some of the commonly used blocks. If I don't find the block that I want in there, I can type the name of it. So just pretend you don't see image right there. I can just type IMA, and it's going to give me the image block. Or it's going to also give me the gallery, cover, a few other blocks in there. But if I wanted to use the image block, I would click on image. And this is going to give me the option to upload the image or add an image from the media library. I don't think I have anything in the media library, but we're going to check. So I'm going to click on media library here. And nope, I don't. don't think I have anything. Oh, I do have a couple things in the media library. So if the image that you want is already in the media library, you don't need to upload it again. You would just select it from the media library and go from there. If the image that you want is on your computer, it hasn't been uploaded already, you would click on upload, find the image. So I'm going to just click on hello.png and click open. And that's going to insert the image into the page. Whenever you insert an image, this is really important. You always want to give it alt text. This is alternative text. This is very important for accessibility of your website. If someone's coming to your website and they're using a screen reader, they can't see the image, you need to describe what's in the image. So this is going to say text that says, hello, hello. I can't type. Welcome. Hello, welcome. For the image, oops, I just clicked off the image. For the image, you can see over here on the right side, I'm currently seeing the settings for the block. If you click up here where it says post, this is all of the settings specific to the post. Now, I'm not going to give you a long tutorial on how to use the block editor. I'm just going to show you a few features of it. If you ever lose this menu on the right side, you'll click on this gear up at the top. So you can see that gear toggles that off and on. So if you ever lose that, just do that. If you want to change the settings for a particular block, so if, for example, I wanted to change the settings for the image, you would click on the block. So if I wanted to change the image, the settings for this text, for example, I would click on the text, and now you can see that I've got my paragraph block selected. If I go down here and I add another block, if I added heading, you can see now I've got the heading selected, and it's going to show me the settings for the heading. Each block has different settings. So you can see here again, if I choose the image setting, it's going to show me all of the settings that are specific to that particular block. You have lots of blocks. So if I click here and press enter to add a new block, when I click on the plus, if I click on browse all, that's going to show me all of the blocks that I have installed for this particular website. These are the default blocks that are installed automatically with WordPress. There are lots of them. You can do a lot of things with them. If you need to use a block that's not installed there are plugins that you can install that add additional blocks. So for example, there's a plugin called CoBlocks. If you search for plugins, you're going to find lots and lots of block plugins. So we'll show you that a little bit later. Now, if you're done making changes to your post, a few other things I want to show you about the post. I'd like to go into the post settings. So over here on this settings on the right side, I'm in the post settings. Just a few things about them. The publish date by default is going to be when you published it, when you clicked on publish, or you can see if I clicked on schedule. If you wanted to change that, you would click on the date. This allows you to pre and post date the publish date of the post. So if I wanted to post date or predate this or post date that, post date it, I would click on the 11, September 11th. And now when I publish this, it's going to publish it and it's going to say it was published on September 11th. If I want to publish this in the future, so if you're a blogger and you want to write a bunch of blog posts, but you don't want them to be published all at the same time, you maybe want to space them out one week after another, you can choose a date in the future, and you can see that button up there changes to schedule instead of publish. If you make changes to the blog post and you're not ready to publish it or schedule it, you can always click on Save Draft. That's going to save it as a draft, and then you can continue to make changes without publishing the post on the front end. If you ever need to preview a post, then you're going to click on this preview button here. Choose if you wanted to preview it in desktop. That's the default. If you want to view it in tablet, which looks like that, or mobile. I do recommend clicking on preview in a new tab to see that. I'm only recording this one tab, so it's not going to work for me. But you would click on preview in a new tab, and that's going to show you what the post would look like within the context of your theme. So it may look a little bit different than what you see here. So I do recommend as you're making changes that you preview it in a new tab from time to time. I'm going to go back to desktop, so it shows me the desktop editor, and I'm going to click on preview to hide that. A couple other things that I've got in here for a post. You can make the post sticky, which means that in the list of blog posts, it's going to go towards the top. If you make all of your blog posts sticky, it's going to make it hard to really float things to the top. So I recommend using this sparingly only for posts that you really want to float to the top. You can go back and uncheck that setting if the post no longer needs to be at the top. You can also change the author. So if somebody else published this, their name would be listed there. You can change that if you need to. If you ever start writing a post and you say, yeah, I really don't want that post, you can move it to the trash. A couple other things that we've got here. Sometimes you can change the template for a post. This depends on the theme that you're using, whether or not you can change that, and if there are other templates. So what shows there is going to depend on your theme. It may also depend on plugins. The permalink, if I open up the permalink, it's going to show me the URL slug, and you can see that this is what the URL will be when I publish it. So it's going to be demo.local/hello-world. The slug is very important. If you learn anything about SEO, you'll learn that you want to optimize your slugs. You don't want them to be super long. By default, the slug is going to be whatever your heading is up here. So if you change this, you might, well, you don't want to change the slug after the post has been published, because if other people have linked to it, they've linked to that slug, they've linked to that permalink. So make sure you change it before you publish the post. So just be careful with that. All right. Posts give you the option to add things to categories. By default, they are going to be marked as uncategorized. I will show you how to make that a nicer name. So I usually change that to news or updates or something like that. If you want to add a new category, you can. You can just type in the category name. Categories can have parents, they can have grandparents, great grandparents. You can nest them however you need to. Think of your categories as sort of a table of contents for the posts in your website. It just makes it easier. If you have the categories on your posts, it makes it easier for your visitors to find content in your website if you categorize them. I'm going to leave this as uncategorized for now. Tags you can think of as sort of an index for your website. You don't have to use tags if you don't want to, but they can be useful. If you wanted to add a tag, you would type, so for example, if this blog post was about blogging, I would type blogging, and I would add that tag to any post about blogging. If you wanted to, you could just press enter to add the tag. If you have existing tags, if you type in the first few letters of it, they're going to come up and you can select them. Most themes allow you to add a featured image for the post. How that gets handled depends on the theme. So in some themes, it's going to display at the top of the post. On some, it's not going to do that. But again, it just depends on the theme. This is that excerpt that I mentioned earlier when we looked at the syndication feed. This is where you would write the excerpt. Excerpts are typically not going to have any HTML in them. They're just going to be just a paragraph that introduces what's in the poster page. And then finally, we've got discussion here. You can turn off comments if you want to. There are plugins that will turn these off site-wide. So you can uncheck that per post. You can uncheck the pingbacks and trackbacks as you'll get notifications if people link to your post, but you can turn those off if you want to. If you want to turn it off site-wide, you'll need to install a plugin. Now, when you're ready to publish the post, again, double check the publish date and time. If it's in the future, you'll see a schedule up here. If it's in the past or today or the current time, so if I chose yesterday, you can see here, then it's going to change that to publish. Again, if you're not ready to publish, you want to just save it as a draft because you're not ready to publish it, you can do that. But I'm going to click on publish for this, and it's going to ask you if you're ready to publish it. Are you sure? It's going to give you some settings here to double check, and then just click on publish to publish it. Once that's done, it's going to give you the address. You can click on view post to view it. After you publish a post, when you look at it, if you're logged into the dashboard, if you're logged in up here, you're going to see this admin bar at the top. You can click on edit post to then go in and edit the post to make changes to it. If you want to get out of the post editor without going to the front end, you can click on this W in the top left corner. That's going to take you back to the posts. If you ever need to delete a post, you can just move your mouse over it and then click on trash. And you'll see when you do that, it doesn't actually delete it, it puts it in the trash. So if I click on trash here, you can see I can empty the trash, or I can move my mouse over this, delete it permanently, or I can restore it. If I click on restore and I go back to all up here, you can see that now that post is there, but it's set to a draft. So if I wanted to undraft it, if I wanted to publish it, I could go back into the post and publish it like you saw before. Another option that I have is to click on quick edit. And over here where it says status is set to draft, I can change that to published. And then I can click on update to update that. It's going to show me my categories here and my tags. If you ever need to change the categories, you can again go into the quick edit and you can change the categories and the tags there. I'm just going to click on cancel. If you wanted to change the name of the categories, so if you don't want uncategorized, like I don't like that, I don't think that's a good category name, you can go over here on the menu to the categories and I can click on edit for the category. And I usually change this to news or updates or something like that, and then change the slug to news as well, and then click update. So now if I go back to my posts by clicking on all posts, you can see now that the category is set to news. If you ever need to edit your tags, you can click on tags. You can add tags here, but you can see I have one tag. Right now it's blogging. It's up to you if you use tags or not. Some people love them, some people hate them. It's up to you. All right, next up, we're going to look at the media library. So if we click on media, and I go here, you can see these are the images that I've already uploaded to my website. There's two views by default. You can do like a gallery view or you can do a list view. I personally prefer the list view. It lets me see more information about the images. The media library is going to have your images. It's going to have any PDFs that you upload, any zip files, or any other files that you upload to your website are going to be in your media library. You can have it filter by the types, and you can also have it filter by the date that it was uploaded. When media gets uploaded by default, it gets stored in a folder that has the current month and year listed in the folder. So just be aware of that. If you need to change the media, so if you ever need to delete the media, you can just click on delete permanently. Notice that there's no trash option for this because it's a file. It just deletes the file from the server when you do that. So just be aware of that. You can do some basic editing of the media. So if I clicked on the edit link there, I can do things like I can change the name that's in the library. I can make a couple other changes in here, but not too much that you can do with it. You can also add the default alternative text. Just be aware that this doesn't change the alternative text for images that have already been inserted, at least not at this point. So if you add the text there, hello, welcome. Any images that have already been inserted are going to have whatever alternative text you added. But new images, when you insert this image again, it's now going to automatically have that alternative text. And if you add a caption and a description, it's going to automatically add those as well. So you would want to click on update to save those changes. Now, if you click here where it says edit image, there's not really a whole lot you can do. You can play around with things like you can tweak the dimensions, you can rotate it, you can recrop it. There are some changes in here. Not too much that you can do, but so I usually don't bother with this unless I need to crop something or something like that. So I'm not going to make any changes in there. The other thing I want to show you is if you wanted to add new, you can click on add new here. So if you want to upload images and put them in the library, you can do that. So you don't need to wait until you're ready to insert the image or PDF or whatever. You can actually go to the media library and click on add new, select your files. So if I wanted to add a PDF, for example, let me add this PDF here and click on open. And it's going to upload it. Before I insert it, I can go to edit it and I can add my alternative text. If it's an image, PDFs don't get alternative text, or I can add a caption and a description. So just remember, this is a PDF, no alternative text for PDFs. You will get the alternative text settings for JPEGs, PNGs, WebP images, any images that you upload, you're going to get those. All right, next up, let's look at pages. So if we go to pages here, you can see by default, I've got a privacy policy. It is set to draft. Every website should have a privacy policy and a terms and conditions or terms of use, whatever you want to call it. Every website should have those. They're not technically required for everyone, but in my opinion, they should be. And in some jurisdictions, in some countries, in some states, they are required for your website. If you don't have it, you can have legal issues. So I recommend installing them. If you are not an attorney and you don't know how to write your privacy policy or your terms and conditions, there is a website that I recommend called Termageddon. The URL is, I'll just go to it real quick. Termageddon, termageddon.com. I recommend going to that. It's $99 a year, totally worth it. So they'll set you up with a privacy policy, terms and conditions. If you need a disclaimer, so if you have affiliate links on your website, they can set that up for you. They can also set up an end user license agreement if you need that. And you can see down here, I've got this little pop-up here. In certain countries and in certain states, then you also need to have that cookie consent tool, and you also need to have a cookie policy. And Termageddon can take care of all of those for you. The nice thing about Termageddon is that as the laws change, you can see that it automatically updates your policy, and they'll send you notifications if there's any settings that you need to change. So it's totally worth it. All right, let me go back to my previous screen, and we're going to look at the pages again. Now, pages are very similar to posts. As far as WordPress is concerned, all content is posts. It's just they're different post types. So in this case, it's a post, but the post type is page. So you can see I've got my sample page is published right now. If I click on view, that's going to let me see it. Very exciting. If I go back and I click on edit, I can edit the page. Again, this is using the block editor. If your pages are using the Elementor editor or Divi or anything like that, you might see something that says that on this page. I'm not going to go too in depth on how to manage your pages other than the settings, because we already know that you can add blocks and the settings for the blocks are over here. But if I go into the page settings, you can see that I can publish it. I can pre-publish, post-publish, whatever you want. You can change the author just like you could with the posts. Depending on your theme, you might be able to change the template. You can change the permalink just like you could with the pages or with the posts. Again, don't recommend changing these if they've already been published. If other people are linking to them, that could break those links. So I don't recommend doing that. Just like you could with the post, you can set a featured image. And again, you can turn on or turn comments off. These are turned off by default for pages. They're turned on by default for posts, but turned off for pages. And then you can see there are page attributes. So you can set a parent page. So if, for example, you have an about page, and then under about, you've got leadership, jobs, and stuff like that, you can set the about page to be the parent of that. You can also change the order. This is the default order that it's going to show up in certain widgets and certain output. So you don't usually have to play around with that. If you do, just be aware that the one that has the lowest number is going to be before the one that has a higher number. So if you want them to be in the right order, you need to set the first one to 1 or 0, second one to 1, third one to 2, fourth one to 3, and so on. If you make changes to it, if you wanted to, you can switch it to a draft. But if you make changes to it, you would click on update to publish those changes. So if I added a new block, for example, if I added a heading here, you can see now I can click on update up here. Just a reminder, if this settings area gets hidden, you can click on that little gear icon to make it come back. So if you make changes to it, you can click on update. If you want to, you can switch it to a draft. And again, you can preview in a new tab if you want to. So you can preview in desktop, you can preview in tablet or mobile, up to you. I'm going to click on update to save my changes. And then to get back out of there, I'm going to click on this W, and that's going to take me to my pages list. Notice that I do not have categories or tags. Categories and tags are exclusive to posts. They can be assigned to other types of content using a plugin, but by default, they are only going to be used for posts. You don't apply categories or tags to pages. All right, next up is comments. So if we take a look at the comments, there is a default comment in here. There are plugins that can help you manage comments. I end up, if I have comments turned on for posts, and if you have comments turned on for your posts, it's very likely you're going to get spam comments. There are plugins out there that will help to reduce the spam, will automatically mark comments that look like spam as spam. So I recommend investigating those and possibly installing them. But if you have a comment and you think it's spam, if you're looking back here in your comments, you see you can mark it as spam if you need to. You can also put it in the trash if you would rather do that. Don't want to get too in depth into this because the plugins that handle comments are pretty prolific, and they do a lot of good for the comments. So I'm not going to get too in depth in there. If I go to appearance, which is the next menu item, this is where I can see which theme I'm using. You can see which is your currently active theme. It's going to be marked as active, and it's going to say the name of the theme. It's going to show you, it's usually going to be the first one listed here. This is going to show you the other themes that are currently installed. I recommend having at least one of the default themes. The default themes are going to usually have the year in the name or years in the name. So the past default themes were 2017, 2018, 2019. Actually, I don't know if there was a 2018, but I know there was a 2017, 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. Next year, I'm sure there's going to be a 2023 and so on. You don't need to have more than one default theme. So it's good to have a default theme in case there's ever an issue when you update your site. Some plugin developers and sometimes WordPress developers will tell you to switch to the default theme to make sure that the issue isn't with your theme. So having that default theme still installed is very helpful. If you ever need to delete a theme, I don't recommend deleting the currently active theme. You can't actually do that. It won't let you delete the currently active theme. But if you needed to delete, for example, 2020 here, you would click on the theme details, and here you can see you can delete it. That actually deletes all of the files. It deletes all of the files that are on the server. So there is no restore from trash. You would have to reinstall the theme to add it back. I'm going to delete 2021 as well. So I'm going to delete it. Delete. There we go. Click OK. And there we go. So now all I have is my default 2022 theme. If you wanted to install a new theme, you would click on Add New up here, and you would find a theme that you want to install. I have other videos about installing themes. I've got blog posts and videos about comparing the different starter themes here. So Hello Elementor, Astra, stuff like that. So I'm not going to get into detail with that, but I will show you that if you wanted to install a theme, you would just select the theme that you wanted to install, move your mouse over it, and then you would click on install. So if, for example, I wanted to install Astra, I would click on install. It's going to install it, but it doesn't make it the currently active theme until you click on this activate button. When you click on activate, that's going to activate the theme. And depending on the theme, you may have additional things that you need to do. So you may need to install a starter. You might need to take other steps after you've installed it. Now with most themes, so I'm gonna go back and activate the 2022 theme and make that my active theme. For most themes, you'll see that you can customize the theme. So after you've installed it, you can customize things. So if I click on customize, that's going to take me into the customizer. And what I see here is going to depend on the theme. This particular theme, 2022, uses full site editing. So what you see here is very different. If I go back, and let me go back to my themes. If I activate Astra, I'm going to click on Astra and customize that, you can see it's very different from what I would see for another theme. So just be aware that you're going to see different things depending on which theme you're customizing. So it's very important to note. If I activate a theme that uses this customizer, you can see that I've got different settings over here. The settings that I see over here are going to be different depending on the theme. So on some themes, I might have this global, some themes I might not. Most themes, when you go into the customizer, you will see these settings here: site identity, menus, widgets, homepage settings, and additional CSS. So you probably will see them. If you make any changes in the customizer, it's going to turn this publish button blue. If you want the changes to be saved, you would need to click on the publish button. So if I change the site identity, if I select an icon, let me just set this to the site icon and crop the image. You'll see that this changes to publish. So if I wanted that to be saved, I would click on publish. If I don't want it to be saved, I would click on this X, and it's going to tell me it's going to be lost, and that's okay with me. So it's going to lose any changes that I made there. The other thing I want to point out is that the theme you have selected is going to change what is visible over here under the appearance. So you can see now that I have Astra, then I've got customized widgets, menus, Astra options, and theme file editor. When I activate 2022, you can see right now I've got themes and editor. So, and again, this is because the 2022 theme has full site editing enabled. So it's going to give me the editor instead. So you're going to see different things under appearance depending on the theme. You might also, if you have certain themes activated, you might also see additional menu items. So for example, if you install some themes, you might see a customize or a theme specific menu item over there. So just be aware of that. Let me switch back to 2022. So I'm going to activate that. And let's take a look at plugins. So if I click on plugins, right now I've got no plugins installed. If you wanted to install a plugin, you would click on Add New. And then you would either upload the plugin. So if it's a premium plugin like Gravity Forms or something like that, you would need to upload it. But if you wanted to, you can use free theme or free plugins from the free plugin repository. A plugin that I like to install a lot is Imagify. So I'm going to search for Imagify. Imagify, and you can see this is the plugin. If you wanted to install a plugin, I recommend looking at the description first. Make sure that it's the plugin that you want. Even then, it may not be the plugin that you want. I always like to look and see if it's been updated recently. You can see this was updated the last 2 months. If it's been a couple of years since it's been updated, you may not want to install it because that just shows that it's not actively managed or updated. Make sure that the version of WordPress that you're using is compatible with it. So you can see this is compatible up to 6.0.2. So that's the current version of WordPress that I've got installed. So that's good. What version of PHP is required? You're going to need to check with your hosting provider to see which version of PHP your website is using. Most of these are going to be 7.0 or higher. Some of them are not going to work with 8.0, so just be aware if you 8.0 is it's actually above 8.0, but 7.4 is what a lot of web hosting providers use for PHP. That's actually going to not be supported in the very near future. So you want to try to make sure that the PHP is compatible with 8.0. If you've checked all of this, I usually recommend checking the rating. I don't like to install plugins that have very low ratings because that usually means that there are a lot of issues with them. So I like to make sure that it's got at least 4 stars before I rate it. And I also like to make sure that there are a lot of active installations. Sometimes I'll install a new plugin because I've heard about it and it's got high ratings. But usually if you've got a lot of installations and a pretty high rating there, then it's probably a pretty safe plugin to install. When you install the plugin, you can click here on Install Now. You can also click on Install Now here. So if you click on Install Now, that's going to install the plugin. But similar to the theme, it doesn't actually do anything until you activate it. So it's been installed, the files have been copied over to your site. It's not actually going to be part of your site until you click on Activate. For a lot of plugins, you need to do some setup with it. So you can see here, I activated Imagify. It's going to prompt me to create a free account and then enter my API key. So you would need to do that to finish setting it up. If you have a plugin installed, so if I go back to installed plugins here, let me close this because I'm not going to set it up right now. If you have a plugin installed and you decide that you don't want to use it anymore, you should deactivate it. So you can click on deactivate, and then you should also delete it. So if you're not using it, deactivate it and delete it. If you're not sure if you're going to use it or not, you can deactivate it without deleting it. But once you finally decide that you're not going to use it, then you're going to want to delete it. I do want to show you something. If I activate this again, some plugins, when they're activated, are going to have settings, and some of them are going to have other items listed here. So it just depends on the plugin. So you can look in your plugins to see which plugin you've got installed. Another thing I want to point out here is this view details. If you click on view details, that's going to take you back to the plugin details. If you've installed a premium plugin that you purchased from somewhere other than the WordPress theme repository or the WordPress plugin repository, then it may take you to that website. This is where you're going to look for the documentation. So you're going to go into the installation, the frequently asked questions. if you look in the description, you can see that sometimes they have links to the documentation. This is where you want to look before you ask questions of random people on the internet. How do I use it? Make sure you've read the documentation for the plugin. If you have questions specific to the plugin, you can go to over here where it says WordPress.org plugin page. You can click on that. Since I'm only recording this particular tab, it's not going to show you, but that's going to open up the WordPress plugin page where you can then check the support. There's usually a support forum that you can ask questions on for that. So let me close that. All right, let's add another plugin. So I'm going to click on Add New, and I'm going to search for SEO here, and you can see there's a bunch of SEO plugins. Choose the one that you like. I usually use Yoast SEO or Rank Math. Both of them are really good. It's up to you which one you use. So I'm going to install Yoast for right now. Click on Install, and then remember, you need to click on Activate to actually activate it. So let's do that. And we're installing this one because I want to show you sometimes when you install a plugin, it's going to take you through a configuration wizard. So Yoast SEO does that. The first time that you install it, it's going to set you through this configuration wizard. So I'm just going to go through it. I'm just going to answer the defaults. I'm just going to click on Continue. That's okay. Continue. You can just go through and set everything up the way that you want it. It's going to tell you you should fill these out, but you can save and continue. So go through and fill all this out. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but just be aware that some plugins are going to do that. And also notice that it added this Yoast SEO menu over here. So this is a plugin that does something like that. If I go back to my plugins and go to my installed plugins, I also want to show you here that this Yoast SEO, it doesn't have settings like it did for Imagify. It says get premium. There is a premium version of Yoast SEO. You can pay for it. They also have frequently asked questions. They've got their settings here. And then again, you can deactivate. If you click on view details, that's going to open up this menu here, give you the details about it. And again, you can click on the WordPress.org plugin page to go to the plugin page where there is a support forum that you can ask for questions. But look for the documentation in here. You do need to do some reading and find the documentation. Ask questions of the people that wrote the plugin. They're going to be the ones that are going to answer the questions the best. They're going to know the most about their plugin. So if you ever have issues with a specific plugin or a theme, so if I go to my appearance and go to the theme details, you can see I can click here on the name of the author, and that's going to take me to their website. So I can ask questions there. So you always want to do that for plugins and themes. All right. If you go under users, that's going to show you all of the users that are registered for the website. It gives you some basic details. If you add a new user, so if you needed to add somebody to help you administer the website, you can see here that there are several roles. You've got administrator, editor, author, contributor, and subscriber are the defaults. Yoast added a couple of additional roles of SEO manager and SEO editor. By default, a user can only have one role. If you want somebody to be able to manage everything on the website, including the ability to delete you as the administrator, you would set them to administrator. If you only want them to be able to edit the content, so you want them to be able to manage the posts and the pages, you can set them to editor. If you only want them to be able to edit and add their own posts, you would set them to author. If you only want them to be able to edit or add their own posts, you would set them to contributor. I can't remember the difference between author and contributor. It's very, very subtle. If you don't want them to be able to edit or add anything, you can set them to subscriber. But people don't need to have an account on your website unless you're doing certain things with it. So for example, if you've got SEO or a membership or something like that, then there's a really good chance that users don't need to have access to your dashboard. But if they do, you can set them up with a specific role. Make sure you read the documentation on WordPress.org about the user roles before you set them. I'm not going to add a user, but if you did want to add a user, you would give them a username. They need to have an email address. These two are both required. The username cannot be changed unless you install a plugin to do that. The email address can be changed. So can the first name, last name, website, and the password. All right. We're going to go under tools here real quick. The tools that you get in here are just helpful things. Depending on what plugin you've got installed, you might see different tools listed here, but these are the defaults. You can import content from other platforms. So, for example, if you're moving over from Blogger to WordPress, you can install the Blogger importer. If you're moving from one WordPress site to another, you can install the WordPress importer. But you can also export your posts. You can export all of your content, your posts, your pages, your media. So you can do all kinds of exporting with that. All right, so back to the settings. I do want to point out that some plugins will add to the settings menu. So I don't have any installed right now that would do that, but just be aware that some of your plugins, the settings are under the settings menu. So, oh, I'm sorry, I do have one, Imagify. So you can see here if I go to settings and then Imagify, then that's going to take me to the Imagify settings. All right, so that was a really quick overview of the WordPress dashboard. Just make sure you've taken a look around, check out all of your settings. If you've got plugins installed, you've got themes installed, make sure that you're reading the documentation on those before you ask questions elsewhere. So check with the authors of the plugin or theme, ask them for help before you ask anybody else if you get stuck with anything. All right, hopefully you found this useful. Add some comments if you have any questions. Make sure you join my Facebook group. It's WordPress Help for Beginners with Christy Ray. So make sure you've joined that if you have any questions, general questions about WordPress. So I'll see you there.